what I'm trying to show my students is the goal is to keep growing. That's the goal. And I'm trying to set that as an example, that I'm much better than I was 10, 20, 30 years ago, both as technically as a trumpet player and musically. And I'm trying to do new and different things and grow that way. And that's what they should be focused on.
This episode contains adult language and adult humor.
Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults?
If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Joey Tartell. Joey, well, he's one of a kind. Never one to let popular conventions limit him, Joey is not only well respected in the jazz world as a dazzling lead player, but is also a highly accomplished classical musician and founding member of the trumpet ensemble Tromba Mundi. Joey is a passionate educator who's never at a loss for words and is dedicated to his personal calling to rid the world of bad trumpet playing. So, pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. Oh, I am so excited today for this episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang because I am joined by one of the greatest gurus of all time, the one and only Joey Tartell. Joey, my friend, it is so good to see you and all of your illustrious pinkness there.
Absolute pleasure to be here. Did you wear the pink shirt just for me? That
I wore
looks
this
good.
just for you, dude. Just for you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you and I, we have a history. Not a super long one, not a super deep one. But we do like to hang and get together and talk a lot of nonsense. I mean, really, technically hang, because it's more than just about trumpet talk. It's a lot of sports. It's a lot of things like that. So, just good to catch up with you. So, Joey, let me just start with this. What has been on your calendar now that we're finally getting back to being out and performing again?
It has been great to get up performing again. Just recently, I just got back from the International Trumpet Guild Conference, which was last week. Now, sometimes when you go to things like that, you get to do either, you're there to attend and have a good time, or you might play with something. I ended up busy last week, which was really great. I did a classical recital. I decided to do something called 7 horns in 60 minutes because, that seemed like a good idea until I figured out I had to fly with 7 horns.
Yeah.
Genius move. And then I was playing the Saturday night concert. It was a big band thing with Jens Lindemann, which was a real gas. But this was the funniest thing I did last week. The Navy Commodores, the jazz band there, one of their lead players couldn't make the trip, and they were doing a clinic on lead trumpet playing, so they asked if I would sit in. And if you haven't seen me recently, it's very clear I'm not active duty, so my hair is long. But that was recent. But I will tell you, the stuff that's been going on has been great. I do a lot of pops orchestra work. So there are orchestras around the country that'll say, hey, that's not exactly orchestral trumpet playing. And I have good relationships with the trumpet principal trumpets and the trumpet sections. And that's been coming back a little bit. So I've been playing with the St. Louis Symphony. I've been playing with I'll be back with the Pittsburgh Symphony next month. Which is a lot of fun. And if you're anywhere near Pittsburgh, if you don't know, they hired Byron Stripling last year as their principal pops conductor. So you got Byron. If you don't, if you haven't heard Byron, you just need to hear Byron. So he's a conductor, and of course he'll sing and he'll play. And a lot of times it's very big bandy. And that trumpet section led now by Michael Wilkinson, who's a great principal trumpet player. It's like, why don't we this is a big band thing. Let's get you to come in. And I'm always happy to come and do that.
Yeah, well, that's cool. That sounds really good. I mean, how did you cope with the downtime? I mean, I know everybody had different strategies and different things that they did. Like Rex Richardson really dove deep into his 100 days of practice thing, and so we had all these guys doing all their practice videos. Trent Austin was another person who was just putting out like tons of content with that. And some people just actually got into a major funk, and they didn't really do much of anything. What did you do?
It was really so hard for so many people, but there's when I saw what was happening to some of my friends, especially those who are making their livings as freelancers or in the big cities where everything, if you're playing Broadway and then suddenly that you're just all done, or you're playing a major symphony orchestra and then you're just sort of done. I have a full-time teaching job. I teach trumpet at Indiana University. So I sat back and went, okay, all things being equal, I've got it really good. So I'm not complaining. And this is actually when I got together with my friends, Bill Stoneman and Brian Appleby Weinberg. We had originally planned to do a trip to England and talk to some cornet guys over there and talk about the pedagogy of that, to compare with how we sort of think of trumpet pedagogy in the United States and how they think of pedagogy in England, and see how many similarities, how many differences, and how that goes down. We had it all set up ready to go and thought, well, this would be like maybe a 10-part sort of thing. And then, well, we can't go. So this is what started our podcast. So that kept us sort of plugged in, and so we could get that up and running. And then, I'm a practice guy, so I'm still in here practicing every day. But having the teaching job, and mostly, there was times where it was all happening online, which led me to get a little better setup here, so I could do that more effectively, which has continued. Now, when students want to check out IU, they're like, "Can we do like a Zoom thing?" And with a good setup, I can do okay. It's still not as good as being in person, but I thought there's never been a better time in the world to have a full-time teaching job, which of course I love having and love doing, but that kept me sort of rooted in, I'm still doing my job. It's just everything. I watched my calendar, performance calendar, like everyone, just empty out, and thought, okay, well, what do I want to practice? What do I want to do? So started the podcast, started writing some things, and, doing some recordings of my things as well. Keeping yourself busy, because it dropping into that funk was a reasonable thing. It was really hard. So I managed to stay out of that. I always want to think about what's going to be going on, what's next. And so the podcast was next, the online stuff being next. So I keep myself busy, just in a different way.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Well, I definitely want to circle back to the podcast in a minute.
Sure.
I was actually having a conversation recently with someone about something completely different, but it's all the same. That a lot of times we deal with anxiety and disappointment because we tie our definition of success to a specific outcome. And when we either attain that outcome or we don't attain the outcome in many cases, then we have these feelings of disappointment. And I was just saying how, for me, it was changing my mindset from thinking about this is specifically what I want to accomplish to this is the process that I want to go through. So these are the things that I want to do on a kind of the habits I want to create in my life, and the kind of life I want to live, as opposed to, just doing this single thing. So, when you're saying you are a practice guy, I know so many players who, if they don't have gigs, whether it be because the health issue or an environmental issue, then they don't practice,
Right.
And they get bummed out, and they just don't want to practice because I don't have anything to practice for, as opposed to the reason I'm practicing is because practice is what I want to do. Practice is me. So I think that's a really interesting thought, so for something for people to think about. And as an educator, how do you go about instilling or trying to help people to understand that the practice is the key to their eventual ability to create a career out of being a trumpet player, as opposed to just attaining a specific set of skills?
It's a great question, and it's one of the most important things I'm trying to do. The idea of, if you want to, exactly what you said, if you think, well, if I could just get this job, well, then I'll be good and I'll be happy and everything will be done. And what's unfortunate, I do this in a number of ways. I'll start with the silly. What I thought, if I was naive in any way when I was young, it was in thinking, hey, eventually I'm going to get a job, and then I'll get a better job if I'm good, and if I get better and I get a better job. And eventually I'll get to that job where it's all unicorns and rainbows and everybody's the best, and and there's no bad side. And there is no job that is that. There are people sitting in everybody's dream jobs that are unhappy in those jobs. So you might think, and this is what I finally figured out, and especially playing with lots and lots of orchestras, every professional organization, every dream gig that anybody's listening to this has, is just like middle school band. They're all middle school band. So there's the person who's like sucking up to the teacher. There's like, hey, you forgot to give us homework. And there's the person, how are they even here? And then there are lots of people who are really positive in trying to do that. But those dynamics are the same everywhere. So the outcome, if you're outcome based, then what happens when you achieve, right? So I'll use myself as an example. I was very fortunate in a number of ways, and maybe more so than most in this way. I got to play lead trumpet on Maynard Ferguson's band, and I was 27 years old. So then what? So I get off of Maynard's band. It's like, well, that's pretty much what I wanted to do. I guess I'm retired now. But this is where we're better in career goals and should be than athletes. We're both sports fans. And I'll tell you that the two athletes that I followed that were exactly my age, they're Troy Aikman, who was the quarterback with the Dallas Cowboys, won 3 Super Bowls, and pretty much had to retire in his mid-30s because, he's getting knocked around pretty hard. And Mike Tyson, actually, and I are the same age. I remember seeing him on the cover of Sports Illustrated, this new 18-year-old. I'm like, hey, I'm 18. So I was following these guys. Well, we're in our mid-50s now. I'm still practicing, getting better, very excited about the stuff I'm able to do. Now they're in the position of talking about those things. So it's so much better. So what I'm trying to show my students is the goal is to keep growing. That's the goal. And I'm trying to set that as an example, that I'm much better than I was 10, 20, 30 years ago, both as technically as a trumpet player and musically. And I'm trying to do new and different things and grow that way. And that's what they should be focused on. This year we had 2 trumpet ensembles from IU that went up to the national trumpet competition. They're really excited getting out there, and we haven't always had a large presence there. And I was explaining to them, here is your goal. Your goal is to go there, play your best, and then enjoy the whole thing. And they said, well, what about winning? I said, it has nothing to do with it. 10 years from now, it doesn't really matter who won. 10 years from now, it's going to matter, do you remember the experience? Did you have a good time? Did you meet some people? Do you have some people you hang out with? And it's the same with auditions. And as frustrating as it is for young students or even like my doctoral students looking at college jobs, when you go, if you take that audition and you showed who you were during that day, if you didn't get the job, that's just not your job. And yeah, that can be frustrating, but better that you didn't get something that wasn't going to be a good fit. That just means that wasn't the right fit for you and you move on because you're not in charge of that part. So the goal is always perpetual growth, perpetual growth, perpetual growth. The goal isn't, I just want to win that gig. And if you do that right, it's amazing how many of those kind of gigs end up happening anyway.
Yeah. And your stress level goes way down.
Right.
Way down. So, when you're talking about that approach of, it's not about winning. And which is so funny, coming from sports fans like we are, because, a team is always the greatness of a team, or like you're talking about Aikman, like a quarterback particularly, you're always measured by your wins. That's what determines your greatness. Your failures are often, they can capsize your career really quick. And I think with trumpet playing, it seems to be the same thing. Obviously, that your failures definitely, your crash and burns in a piece can sometimes outweigh all of the great stuff that you've done, which is so frustrating because, you could play 99% of a piece perfectly and you cack one note and suddenly you feel that way. And then often from a pedagogical approach or point of view, that becomes the thing that the teacher's harping on you about, and it's not necessarily about helping you to grow. It's just like, you're screwed up, you need to fix that stuff. So as a teacher, how do you help your students to balance that drive of pushing their levels, of doing their best, but without that negative baggage that comes along with I can't make a mistake, I can't fail, I can't, all the negatives that sometimes creep into our psyche. What's your approach to that?
My approach is it's very straightforward, and I think language is important. I am that friend that corrects people's grammar and corrects their spelling and text threads. So, but word choice is important, and exactly what you just said is what happens so much. I can't. So often a student will finish playing, say, all right, so tell me, what'd you think of that? Well, this was bad, and this was bad, and this was bad. I'm like, wow, I actually thought most of that was really good. So you got to start with being honest. You got to actually be, and this is where recording yourself is always great. And everybody says this because it's true. Record yourself, listen back, and think, okay, what went well, and then what would you like to improve? And then how you think about how you're going to improve that becomes important. Because if you think, I better not make that mistake, that's a negative. And as soon as you're thinking of a negative, you got no shot. You have to be thinking in the positive. So instead of thinking, I'm not doing this, what are you going to do? So I will say to students, all right, so what are you going to do the next time? Well, I'm not going to do that. Well, I'm not going to miss that note. Well, I didn't ask you what you're not going to do. I'm asking what you're going to do. All right, so what's the adjustment, either musically or technically, in a positive sense? You always have to be thinking about what you're going to do. Because, and I use this all the time. So if I tell you, don't think of pink elephants, what's the first thing in your head? Pink elephants, then this is trumpet playing. You're thinking, don't miss that note, don't miss that note, don't miss that note, don't miss that note. How did I miss that note again? Well, that's all you're focusing on is miss that note. That's just brain wiring. So you always have to be thinking, and the word choice and the word, how you think about it is always in the positive. What are you going to do? Where is your focus? Your focus has to be on the positive of how you're conceiving of that technically, musically, so that then you have a shot. Now, we're trumpet players. We're gonna miss notes. And that's the other part, knowing that. We've all been in those pieces, recitals, performances where you go in with this idea. All right, this time it's gonna be perfect. This one time it matters. Now it counts. I'm gonna nail this. So the first mistake, what happens? Then you think, oh no, what happened? So now you're already looking backwards, which then means second mistake. Oh no, now what happened? Now you're still looking backwards. I refer to this as the spiraling pit of despair because that just leads you round. If you're thinking, and I tell my students this going into recitals, remember, you're about to play an hour's worth of music. You're going to make some mistakes. That does not mean it's not going to be a great recital. If you play musically and you play, well, yeah, guess what? You're still going to, have a couple of mistakes and it can still be great. So don't worry when those happen, and think if they happen. They're going to happen. I played an hour-long recital last week. I definitely missed some notes. Generally speaking, the recital went well.
Yeah.
So it's always thinking in the positive. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable all the time.
Yeah. Well, that kind of reminds me of a story that, you were talking about Maynard, playing with Maynard earlier. And this was the perfect juxtaposition of the Maynard influence and the sports influence. He was talking about the fear of playing high notes. And this is back in the 70s.
Sure.
And he was saying, so many players are afraid of missing a note. And he used the analogy of Reggie Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. October.
Yeah.
And, back then, if you had a batting average of, well, even now, if you have a batting average of 300, that's pretty good. That's nothing to laugh about.
Yeah.
And, he used that as example, said, here he is, the highest paid player in baseball. Of course, right now that salary is nothing compared to what these guys are getting paid. But this guy's getting paid, $1 million to hit 3 of every 10 pitches that come across the plate.
Right.
The odds are you're hitting more than 300. You're batting more than 300 when you're on stage. So don't be afraid of just going for it. Swing for the fences, basically. So I think there's a lot to be learned from that. Now, I know that we have had this discussion before, that a lot of people equate trumpet playing with athletics, and you have a different slant on that.
I do. I see the musicians are athletes, and we're all like it's athletic, and we're not. I think of us as artists. Now, there's a lot of overlap in how we train and prepare, like how we practice and how we go. But in music, there's no defense. There is nobody running at me trying to stop me from playing the high G on the last note. It's all on me. So the idea of I want us to think of as that we're artists. And so really what we're trying to do is, and I grew up in Texas in a highly competitive atmosphere. I remember those, district and region band things where all I was thinking in that moment is, I got to go win. And boy, when I got to college and was like, when do I go win now? And they're like, that's not what happens. You're going to be in that group and go to rehearsal on Monday. And it took a while to kind of recalibrate. And boy, I didn't realize how much my head was wrapped up in that, which wasn't helping. because what it was really doing was just trying to make me compare to others rather than figure out what I want to sound like. Because if you're thinking, well, I need to be better than, how do you do that? Because even back to sports, right? You're right when they talk about wins and losses are what dictate how great you are. But boy, is somebody going to tell me that like John Stockton and Karl Malone weren't great because they never won a title? Not true. Charles Barkley never won a title. Not true. Dan Marino got to a Super Bowl in his second year, never got back. These are Hall of Fame players because it's a team game. Where the same thing with music. If you're in an ensemble, this is a team thing. Even as a soloist, it's much more important for you to think, I want to grow and get better so that I can actually be a musician, not I want to be better than that next person. So I really, as much as the training part is similar, I'm up early every morning and I'm practicing the fundamentals, which could be like, weight training. And then I get into the music, which is like running plays. And, there's similar ways in which we practice. But when we get to the performance part of this is much more about art than it should be about competition. So I want to think of us as artists, not as athletes.
All right. Well, I appreciate your stance on that. That's one thing I love about you, Joey. You rarely speak your mind. You
shy, retiring type. I know.
That's you. To a T. No, but I think that's really great because there is that stigma that's attached to competition. And like for myself, when I was a competitive martial artist, I mean, I equate that a lot more with music than I do football or basketball, for example, because for me in that training process, it was the competition for me was more about how do I push my level the next time. I say, I'm going to train as hard as I can. I'm going to perform. I'm going to get my results, get my scores. Now, the next time I go out, can I fix the things that I kind of goofed on this last time? And it was more about my personal development than it was about trying to beat anybody. As a matter of fact, I made a lot of great friends during that because we were all like excited to see each other. And, when someone beat you one time, it's like, oh man, what have you been training on? I'm going to train on that too. And it was just that every time we saw each other, it was motivation to up our own personal game in our practice, as opposed to trying to worry about beating that person is trying to beat your personal best. So to me, that was kind of the connection. But I think that when we're looking at the way that the school systems, whether it be, middle school, high school, even collegiate, when there's so much pressure about, as you said earlier, like, winning the audition or winning the competition, it can kind of suck the joy out of playing.
Oh, absolutely. And listen, I encourage my students to go to competitions, and we have auditions every semester for placement. So it's part of the system. It's how, in large parts, you can end up, getting a job. But what I'm saying, I think the way to succeed there is exactly what you were talked about there with the martial arts, which is, okay, how do I increase? Because let's say you grew up in the middle of nowhere and you're practicing and you're thinking, all right, I'm doing really, really well. Then you can go to a competition and see who else is doing this. This is one of the reasons I tell my students, you should absolutely go to competitions, not to win, but to see who else is doing what you're doing and meet them, which is a great way to then see what else is out there and perhaps even pick up some stuff. Because boy, I went to college with a lot of really, really great trumpet players. There'd be times where I would lean in a room and say, hey, can I talk through this? Or somebody would do the same with me, which was amazing to have around. This is the hard line to walk. And I think we're doing a pretty good job here at IU right now, which is we have a lot of really, really good trumpet players. We want them to work as a collective. We know not everybody gets along and are our best friends, but the idea of, yeah, we're going to go out there and we're all going to go do our thing. But while we're here, we should all be getting from each other as well. I just saw last week, somebody walked over and said, oh, do you know Paul? And it was Paul Markello. Now, Paul Markello is principal trumpet of the Montreal Symphony. He teaches up at McGill. We did our undergrad together. He was right behind me at Eastman. So I said, are you kidding? We just both laughed. We're like, we went to school together. And they went, wait, how is it? this is how it works. There's plenty of stuff out there. So we were telling some stories and took a couple of pictures. It was great. We haven't seen each other in a long time. But those people you went to school with, and you could say, hey, you're working, you sound great on that. What do you do? And you're doing great on that. You should get that, even though you are in a, I guess, literal technical sense, could be competing for the same jobs. It shouldn't feel like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point. I think that, we can learn in so many different aspects and from so many different people. And it's kind of having that humility to be there and to say to somebody like, well, you really sound great on this aspect of your playing or on the way you interpreted this piece. How are you doing this? What are you working on? How are you approaching it? And being able to glean little bits of information that you can use and you can synthesize and make it part of what else, the things that you're doing. And I know that you work so closely with so many great players. Obviously teaching, but some of the stuff that you've been doing, not only with like the pops and stuff, but with Tromba, you're hanging out with some really some great players. JC, Bo Stoneman, and that belt guy. I mean, he's okay, I guess.
He's okay. We're doing our best to keep him down. So
yeah, you got to have that one guy,
Right.
So, but no, everybody there, they're just all such great players, and you guys all seem to genuinely get along. And I pick up like you're influencing each other in very subtle ways, sometimes not so subtle.
Sometimes not so subtle, right? The Tromba Mundi thing, which is now 15 years old, our trumpet ensemble. I mean, it started with a couple of guys going, what if we got together and recorded this stuff? All right. Do you know somebody? You know somebody? All right. So none of us knew all 5 of us when we started. So, well, let's try it out and do this. And we all just divided up the parts. And this has turned into one of the great musical joys of my life. Like, there's 6 of us now, and exactly right. So you've got JC and Brian and Bill and Scott and John. These have turned into some of my best friends in the world, even though, well, Scott and I live about 2.5 hours apart, but we're all over the country. We do our best to get together about once a year. Like, we'll find a time to get together, rehearse, and do a tour or recording or both. But exactly what you're talking about. Everybody brings... We're all professional trumpet players. We bring slightly different things to the table. So I think all of us easily recognize, hey, certainly I'm a professional trumpet player and I'm good. And that person also has this. That's really cool. Hey, you do that. That's really cool. Hey, you do that. That's really cool. That's the benefit where I think if that goes wrong is the idea of, hey, but I want to be playing first and I'm better than you, which of course isn't a thing in our group. So, that's the benefit of working with people and recognizing, hey, you've got some strengths that I don't have. You've done some things that I haven't done. That's great. How do you do that? What do you bring? It's an amazing part of the group.
Yeah, cool. And you guys, you sound great, and it is very apparent that you enjoy being with each other when you're on stage. So, if you haven't had a chance to check Tromba Mundi out, make sure you they're doing something in your area. You check it out. Purchase their music. We'll put some links in the show notes. So
sure, yeah, we got 4 CDs out there. So yeah. It's good.
Did you get your Grammy yet?
Yeah, that I figure they must just be there must be some conspiracy there that we haven't broken through there.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, because what people are really clamoring for is all trumpet instrumental music. So,
there should be a separate category for that, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Where is the trumpet ensemble category? Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
So, boy, when you talk about chamber music, people seem to like string quartets, and come on, it's been done.
Yeah, I know. That's old hat. That's
exactly.
Like so 17th century. So anyway, let's talk about your podcast for a second. So sure. Speaking of Bill and who it's so funny. He only lives about 45 minutes from me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I never see him.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Yeah.
Never. Yeah. So, I mean, not even like, at a grocery store or a gas station or something like that. I don't know. Maybe if I hang out at donut shops more often, I'd see him there.
Or take up cycling. So
no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I look too funny in those shorts, man. That's just.
Oh,
That's
I don't wear the shorts. That's not a thing.
That's just way wrong.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah. So anyway, you guys started your podcast, and much like me, this was kind of it started during the COVID craze, although it wasn't planned that way. It just kind of that's the way things kind of washed out. But yeah, you've got some really great stuff on there, and again, the camaraderie shows through, and the humor. I was listening to an episode recently where you guys were doing the Jeopardy.
Yes, Bill was torturing us.
Yes, with there's some great stuff in there, but it's a really good combination of just stupid trumpet talk with really informative, some very deep and insightful discussion. So, what is your vision for that podcast? Where do you see this going? What would you like to see happen with it?
Well, I mean, what you said is pretty close. We when we're starting this, the three of us, like I said, it started off as kind of a larger project. We went, well, we can't do the England thing. Why don't we do something? We kind of started talking like, how would this work? And I always think about, well, what would it look like? And maybe this is just watching way too many sitcoms growing up. But I thought, I kind of think of the 1, 2, 3 act, right? So we're going to have a little warm-up segment where I'll just kind of say what we're doing, what's on our minds, have something we want to talk about, right? And that's, so it is a little loose at the beginning and at the end where we usually try and poke some fun somewhere. But the middle of that is supposed to be good information. We want to get good information out there. And this comes from all of us have a certain amount of frustration, probably me more than the other two guys, Brian and Bill, with how much bad information that we see on the internet, especially aimed at young trumpet players. The idea of, hey, all you have to do is buy the secret mouthpiece, or, all you have to do is, if you buy my book and play these exercises, then everything's going to be good. Now, the hard part is there's a lot of really good stuff out there as well. But if you're a young trumpet player and maybe you don't have access to some good instruction or know some people that can help you disseminate the difference on that information, how do you tell? So, and without going on there and bashing other people, although a couple of times maybe we've come close, we're not out there to bash other people. We're out there to say, we're experts in this area. All three of us have been teaching for a long time and performing for a long time in different avenues. So we think we bring a lot there. And we think if you look us up and think, okay, well, those are longtime trumpet players and trumpet teachers, I'm going to give them a shot, that we can give you some essentially fundamentally sound advice about how to go forward. And really, that's the big driving force behind it, is we want to have some place where people can just drop in and say, all right, well, if we're thinking about, auditions or nerves or, some books to think about, we've got episodes on that, and you can just tune in and say, okay, got it. That makes sense. And I don't think we're reinventing a wheel, but we're trying to make sure that good information is out there precisely because there's so much bad. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but some of the most influential and successful trumpet teachers of the generation slightly older than I am, they're not online at all. So when you think of like my teachers, I said with Barbara Butler and Charlie Geyers, my undergrads, and they're still teaching and doing great work at Rice, they're not doing stuff online. So guess what? Instead of getting that great information that they've been putting out there, other people will step in to fill that void that may not be, or they'll say, well, what you're really doing is, so we want good information out there because we think students deserve it.
Yeah. Well, nature abhors a vacuum. So
exactly.
And there is, if you look at the ease of disseminating information over the internet and social media in particular, it's just made it that much easier. The problem with it is that there is no quality control.
Right.
And, everybody's got an opinion, and so much of it is driven from ego. And I think that, and by ego, I mean the desire to feel like their opinion is the only one that matters. And often the ego expresses itself in like a fear-based reaction to any question of the validity of their personal thoughts or beliefs. So, if you say, for example, pedal tones are bad, then you're going to get people who are just going to be so pissed off at you and call you every name in the book because they don't believe that to be true, as opposed to saying, oh, well, hey, if they work for him, then good.
Well, that's an enormous part of my problem with what I see go on online. Everything becomes a binary yes or no, black or white or right or wrong issue. And almost always there's a nuance there that gets really lost. And so we do try and have a nuanced discussion. Like pedal tones are a great example. That's a great one. You watch online. Everybody has to do pedal tones, or that's the secret, or you're terrible. Pedal tones are the worst thing that's ever happened. They're going to destroy your face. And really, is anything really that rigid? It's kind of hard to believe. We'll say, somebody will say, what mouthpiece should you play? And this is the example I use when I do clinics. You could hop online right now and say, what mouthpiece should I play? And someone who has never seen you or ever heard you play will offer you an opinion.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Even I've had freshmen come in and after a couple lessons say, hey, so what do you think of my equipment? And I said, I don't know yet. Like we're still learning. We're still getting to know each other. I'm still figuring out your playing. Is the mouthpiece right for you? I don't know. We're still kind of figuring that out. Now, sometimes there's some extremes. You want to watch out for extremes. But yeah, that idea of everything is either, got to pick a side. Are you pro pedal tones? Are you anti pedal tones? Well, then guess what? Then you're either right or you're wrong.
Yeah. It's like, you're either a Cowboys fan or you have taste. So
but that is a right or wrong issue.
Yeah.
No one should be a Cowboys fan.
That's very true. Thinking about pedagogy and the state of education, music education today, what do you see as being one of the main holes in the system, and what are you trying to do to fix that?
Oh, that's good. Well, it depends. I think there's so many places in the country that are set up with really good systems. But for interested students, I think there are lots of places in this country where it's hard to find individualized instruction. Because band directors, I think the hardest job in all of music is not playing Principal Lobo in the New York Phil. It's middle school band director, because you have a group of kids that none of whom know what they're doing. And you have one person in front that's keeping them all on the same page, right? So for the interested kids that really are, the band directors can't both be in charge of the entire group and all of the bands and all of the instruction and take care of each individual. So if there were and there are places in the country that really do a good job of bringing individuals, even doing group lessons, but finding individual times. And so those students can have that kind of access and really grow. This is where I just grew up thinking, oh, everybody has this opportunity. They just don't want to do it. So at the end of beginning band, I really was into it. I was practicing and I really liked it. So I was like, can I take lessons? And so I started taking lessons, and I had really good band directors. I had really good individual teachers. I had really supportive parents. So yeah, guess what? I got good. It's not like some kind of shock. I had all kinds of great opportunity and was really into it. That doesn't exist everywhere. And if there was some magic way I could have every band program in the country have individualized instruction available to those students that really wanted it, then I think we'd see much more interest, because there's some students sitting in bands that kind of go, yeah, whatever, this isn't really what I want to do. But if you pulled them out and said, here's what you can do in your instrument as well, I think that would spark something. And then the ensembles also get better. And then the kids have more interest and are having more fun. The band directors can take them more and more different places musically. That's probably the big one. But there are, like I said, there are places that do that exceedingly well. One of the first colleges I taught at, it's not there anymore, St. Joseph's College in Rensselaer, Indiana. They went under a couple of years ago. When they hired me, they said, yeah, so you can teach horn too, right? And I said, well, I know how horn works. I'm certainly not an expert in that area, because where they were and the amount that they were paying didn't allow them to bring in somebody who actually played horn as a primary for the majors. That's not great.
Yeah.
So that's I think probably the best one.
Yeah.
For me.
So when you were growing up, you said obviously you had you're in a good environment. You had
Yes.
good teachers. You had all these different things. if you have someone who, let's say, is not in that optimal position, and we're just talking about, this is something that needs to be changed, that needs to change. What is a stopgap measure that you could suggest to people that, if you're that middle school director somewhere, in middle America, and you just don't have the time or the resources or the skills to really help a fledgling student who has some promise to reach the next level, what would you say? Okay, these are some of the steps that you could take to help that student move on and perhaps find a better source of information.
Well, this is where the online thing has actually gotten better. I have met some students online, and even if it's not every week, like, okay, play for me, here's what I want you to do next, and really finding, and you need some people to help you figure out what's the good stuff from the bad. But, there are people who've made some really informative videos that can be really helpful and say, okay, what is good? What can you, I ran into someone I met before whose son is playing trumpet last week. And he said, hey, we watched those videos you put up. It's doing really well. He's really enjoying it. Can I get a picture? And he did really well in the youth competition and was really excited that he played well and had a good time and enjoyed himself. Because there's some stuff there. There's plenty of stuff online. It's just finding the good stuff that's hard. So, talk to your band directors and say, okay, I want to get better at this, but what can I do? And the band directors will go out of their way to help you with this. They're going to do well. But if there's nothing in your area, and then finding it online, and then even to the point of maybe taking some online lessons with people that you trust, because then you get some access. Then, if you have the opportunity, in the summers, get to some camps, because boy, I can't tell you how valuable it is to be around other people that really want to be doing what you're doing, and then be able to focus just on that. It's a great, you'll just skyrocket at that point.
Cool. Well, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
And I'm sure that you're going to have to really think hard on this one. What is the stupidest piece of advice you've ever heard someone be given?
Wow. That's a hard one. There's so much crap out there. Although one of the ones that we made fun on the podcast just recently is nearly at some point every trumpet player has heard, oh, just more air. And that's almost never really that simple. But I'll tell you the one that was the most frustrating for me, and I don't know if it was necessarily stupid, but I was told by a couple of very, very well-known trumpet players when I was very, very young, who weren't teachers. They seemed to want to prove that to me in teaching me. I got to take like a one lesson here or one lesson there. And I'm somebody who, as a kid, I was playing a jazz band, I was playing youth orchestra, I was playing a marching band, I was playing a concert band. I like doing everything. And even now, I like playing, classical recital last week and leading a big band last week in the same conference. I want to be able to do more than one thing. And I was told very young, you have to make a choice. If you want to be a classical trumpet player, then that's all you should be doing. And if you want to be a lead trumpet player, then that's all you should be doing. And I thought, that doesn't sound right to me. And guess what? It's not. The idea that some people have been nice to me, and I've been fairly successful in saying, well, but you're different. And I'm like, I'm not. I mean, this is what I want to do, and I'm doing it. And lots of people have done that. Look at the people in the studios that have been doing this. And even if we go back to the live TV days, the NBC Orchestra, CBS Orchestra, that were playing live TV in the 50s and 60s before we had, videotape to do these kind of things. Those people came in and it would sound like a symphony orchestra. They would sound like a big band. It would sound like a pop group. They were unbelievably musically versatile. There are all kinds of musicians at the highest level that have been doing this for years and years and decades. You don't have to sacrifice to do that. It's possible. And I want to get that message out more and more and more, because I think students hear, well, yeah, but if you want to do that, you have to give up this. Now, you do have to practice more, but what you want to do is possible. And if it's possible, then, if it hasn't been done yet, that just means you get to be the person to do it. But So I think that may have been the most frustrating. That and just, well, just more air and that'll take care of everything. If you look at the throat of your mouthpiece, it's not that big. There's only so much air that's going through that.
Oh, that's why you bore it out.
There you go. Perfect.
There's a solution for everything, Mike.
Exactly.
Blow on the other end.
Right.
You come up with something.
Absolutely.
But and that was actually something I did want to talk with you about, because there is that stigma that you cannot be a well-rounded player. Now, to me, being a well-rounded player means, I just eat a lot more carbs and just,
Yeah.
wings and beer.
I got that part covered too.
But the ability, like you're saying, being able to go in and to be a featured soloist, to play principal, to play in a big band, to play in a small combo, to play in a quintet, to do all these sort of things, and to do it at a high level. I think that we have the ability to do that. But I also think that there's always going to be one area where you kind of feel a little more secure, or have a little bit stronger grasp, most of which I think comes from, which is mostly personality based, the thing that you tend to gravitate towards the most. So when you're playing, obviously you love playing all things, but what to you has kind of been your greatest love?
That's so hard, because everything you just said, I think, is definitely true. Oh man, there still is that, just playing lead in the back of a big band. When that's right, there's nothing that's more fun to do than that for me. Like, that's where, and I've had discussions with good friends, my colleague here, John Rommel, who is an orchestral trumpet player, and he's actually a fabulous, well-rounded player. We've done recording stuff, which is much more pop and rock, and he always nails. And I've said to him, really? In the orchestra every week? Because I never really wanted an orchestra job, despite going to college where I went to college with all of my friends that are now doing that. Because in a big band, I'm kind of the concertmaster. Like, when you're playing lead trumpet, I've got the melody. It's fun. It's great. In the orchestra, there are those moments. There are those weeks you circle. But for me, and I look at that and think, okay, this is the Haydn week. And John said to me, he's like, right, but being on stage with that great music and being in that environment. And I said, yeah, but, and he's not wrong. And I've been lucky enough to do that with some, playing extra with some orchestras here and there. And it's a really great experience. But if you're telling me I've got to pick, and I've got to pick one, when everything's going right, sitting in the back of a big band playing lead is the most fun I can have playing.
Yeah. And when it goes wrong,
oh, well, that's true of most things, but boy, going wrong, it can be really painful.
When it goes wrong, it's the drummer's fault.
There it is. Yeah.
So, and you've had that career. I mean, you played, like you're saying, played with Maynard, and had some other high profile jobs back there, leading into the trumpet section.
I've done okay, and I've been lucky. That's true.
In your opinion, what is the greatest skill, or the most important skill, that a lead trumpet player should have?
All right. Well, let me take the slight detour, and I will answer your question.
All right.
First off, playing the trumpet, I believe, in a technical sense, stylistically neutral. You still got to have great sound, all the great fundamentals built in. So let's assume the great trumpet playing is already taken care of, which I think sometimes in different avenues can be, well, I don't need that because I'm just going to play lead. No. I want all of it there. But as a lead player, it's musical consistency. When you're in a big band, you want to be playing musically, and have a band know that it's going to be that way all of the time, so that your big band is then comfortable in knowing, well, right, if Joey's playing, I know it's going to be consistent. I know it's going to be like this. And you do that, then boy, your band is comfortable, your rhythm section is comfortable, your solo is comfortable, because then they just know, oh, I don't have to worry about that, and I know it's going to be musical, and it's going to be right down the middle. Then everything just it feels easier, which then there's no nerves, there's no worry, there's no hesitation. Everybody just lays out and go. And if I can do that for a band, and everybody finishes the night, had a good time, and it really sounds good, then I know I think that's the large part of it.
Okay. So, like, if we take the idea of having these multiple expressions of your playing, so you're doing solo recital, you're doing big band, you're doing quintet, and you have to do them all within the course of a week, shall we say. Each of those positions has a slightly different requirement in terms of sound, articulation, phrasing, things like that. How do you manage staying clear on the requirements in each venue?
That's where, right back to the beginning, being a practice guy. So I start my day pretty much the same every day. I get in my office about 7 in the morning, yes, even in the summer. And this is my technical practice stuff, which people can say, like my routine or my warm up or everything. I don't think of it that way. I think of it as my technical practice. And I'm going through 9 trumpets every day, and I'm playing fundamentals of the horn, which again, I think are stylistically neutral. What that has done to me over the years is then when it's time for performance, that's the first part of the day. Later in my practice days when I'm practicing music. Now, this is where it gets complicated and nuanced because there are not enough hours in the day to practice as much music as I would like to play. And you have to be smart enough to know when that if I'm doing 2 hours in the morning, if I'm doing another 20 minutes here, 30 minutes here, hour here, there's a time where you should stop, right? And especially if you have performances coming up, so that you're always practicing different areas of music, so that my theory being, if I'm doing this to myself on a very regular basis, whenever I go out and play music in public, I have been honing those skills and whatever that requirement is. And even what you're talking about, which does happen, I'm going to play a classical recital. I've got a quintet gig, and then there's a big band thing on the weekend. Yeah, those happen. Then when I show up, no matter what's there, I'm ready to play whatever that is. Because all of those things are home base. All of those horns are home base. All of those styles are home base. And I'm going to sit down recently. This was maybe a couple of months ago. The St. Louis Symphony was here at IU. They were going to do a couple of days. They did a little mini residency. So they'd done some clinics. They'd done some side-by-side. And on Friday at 4:30, my phone rang. And I was just walking into, we were doing a search for our new trumpet professor. We were going to do some Zoom interviews. And it's the personnel manager from the St. Louis Symphony who said, Joe, you in Bloomington? And I've played pops with them before. I have a good relationship with the orchestra. And I said, sure. So, we're here. I said, yeah, of course. We need you to come play the concert tonight. Well, what would I be playing? And the first piece is a classical concert. They're doing this piece I'd never heard of before. And then the second piece, they were doing Gershwin Piano Concerto. They said, well, we want you to play first on the first piece. You'll be alone on that. And then assistant on Gershwin Piano Concerto for Tom Drake. I said, okay, I should have enough time to get home and change clothes. So I went home, changed clothes. What are we wearing? Came back, walked on stage, and Austin, who's playing second this year, talked me through, here's what we're doing, the 7/8, 3/2/2, and there at the end, there's some fanfare stuff, and we're going to go up here and do that. So, all right, let's go. I had no idea I was going to be doing that. Obviously, I had no time to prepare, and this is the hard part, when people think, well, if I have this gig, I'm then going to practice differently. I don't practice differently even on days of performances, which then this was a perfect example. I'd already played 3.5 hours that day. I already came in the morning and done my thing, and I'd done some practicing during the day, and I was, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'll go home and I'll go see the concert. That was my schedule anyway. I ended up playing the concert. I wasn't, for lack of a better term, prepared for that. I couldn't set up for that. So I show up and boom, I sit down and read that, and then we go out and where do we go? We went to the Irish Lion, a nice place here in Bloomington where you can get some good food afterwards. But so there's the idea is, over the long haul, you need to practice 2 things: the fundamentals of the horn and the music. Any kind of music that you want to be prepared, the wide variety, and you can't do everything every day. You want to be doing everything regularly, so that you're then all trumpets are home base, all music is home base, and then you can really be effective in that way. That's the theory. So far, so good.
Yeah, well, we'll check in with you in another couple decades and see.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
A longitudinal study.
Exactly.
Well, and that's And I think that's really solid advice, though, for younger students, because it is becoming more important to be more flexible in your playing, to have more versatility. Like you're saying, yes, back in the day, if you were on like the NBC Orchestra, CBS, or something like that, you did have to play a variety of styles. But then we kind of got into this point where trumpet playing became very, very specific.
Yes.
It's like, well, you're training to be a principal player. You're training to do this, and so now though there aren't as many jobs. If your goal is to be a principal trumpet player, how many working orchestras are there, that need a principal trumpet player?
Yeah.
But how many possible gigs are there out there? The number of gigs, there's still plenty. But if you're only able to play that one style or that one approach to playing, then you've limited yourself. You're painting yourself in a corner. So I know that, for yourself as an educator, how do you help to instill that concept in your students that you need to keep your options open?
I think two things. I'm never telling my students what I think they should be doing, but what I actually believe is that being more musically versatile will make you better at anything narrow, because you're exactly right. Jobs have gotten more and more narrow in their focus. But if we look at the people that we've always found to be most successful in those jobs, by far, most of them have a musically diverse background. So we all like to point to Bud Herseth in the 20th century as probably the defining orchestral trumpet player, because he was great and he was amazing. What was he doing before that? He was playing in dance bands in the Navy. Okay, so he wasn't just sitting around practicing excerpts. That's not how he got where he got. And we look at Phil Smith, right, who was in the New York Philharmonic and was astounding for decades and decades and decades, who goes and plays cornet with the Salvation Army Band. And, so many, there's so many orchestral players that don't think of themselves as soloists because that's such a completely different thing and you couldn't do both. I don't know. Phil Smith did a really good job of doing both for a long time. So we see those people and go, well, wait a minute. If these are the people we look up to and they're more musically diverse, why aren't we thinking the musical diversity is actually helping us become great at the one thing we want to do? Because if I have a student tell me, listen, this is the one thing I want to do, and that's it, I'm not going to tell them they should be doing something else. I'm going to say, to be able to do that well, you want to have a lot of skills. And those are two easy examples to point to because they're examples all of us know. But, just older than me is Wynton Marsalis, and that cornet album he did at Eastman, he did when I was an undergrad. So I would go by and watch as many rehearsals as I could and thought, well, I've heard these jazz records, and then I watch him play those cornet solos and it's just astounding. And there are the people who are thinking, well, you can't really do both. I'm like, that guy seems to be doing a pretty good job of doing both. His trumpet playing is astounding. And then what music does he want to play? Boy, it seemed to work really well for him. So that musical versatility, I actually think, and Wynton certainly, as his career went on, has definitely focused to the jazz side because that's what he wanted to do. But certainly had he wanted to do anything else, I have a feeling he would have been just as successful. That's just where he wanted to go. So I actually think the musical, having the versatility, makes you better no matter what you want to do.
Yeah. That makes absolute sense. And there is the trade-off. And by the trade-off, I'm talking about the trade-off of time and energy. If you want to do more, then you are going to have to put in a little extra.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I this is my phrase. It's in addition to, not instead of.
Yeah.
You want to do more? That's in addition to. That's correct.
Yeah. So, it's understanding that you are going to have to make that. And at some point you may have to make that decision of, well, I only have X amount of hours. Maybe you're not a full-time professional. You're somebody like me who plays regularly, but this isn't my full-time gig. Right. So I have other things that I have to do to make up for the fact that I'm not gigging. So, that limits my ability to spend time practicing my horn. So I have to become more judicious about how I approach my practice regimen, which is
Absolutely.
just have a couple of drinks and look at my trumpet. I thought about practicing, but no, it's making those decisions. And for me, it's always about, I don't care what somebody's decision is. It's just be happy with your decision.
Right.
It's like, this is what you decided. This is what you're getting. Okay. If you're not happy, then make a new decision. But don't complain about the fact that you don't have what you want because you haven't done the work that you needed to do.
Oh, this is enormous. This is, I think, a big part of my job. I think of this like the Matrix problem, right? In the Matrix, he gave Keanu Reeves, Morpheus gave Keanu Reeves a choice at the beginning. Listen, now that you know what the real world's like, you can either stay here or you can go back and you'll never know, right? What I tell my students is, I'm not giving you the choice. What I'm showing you is this is the amount of work it takes, and this is what you're going to need to do to be able to get have a shot at a really good professional career that you want. If you don't want to do that work, that's fine. Exactly what you're saying. Then you just want to find and find something else to do, and that's okay.
Yeah. And that has been my secret to life, and that's the way I approach things. And it works for me because I feel like I'm relatively even keeled, and, everybody's got, those moments, but, I don't get too stressed out about stuff because it's like, okay, well, that's the choice I made. And yeah. All right.
Yeah.
But I got to go with it,
Right.
Win, lose, or draw. So, all right. Well, I tell you what, I mean, we could certainly talk for hours about so many different things, but
I have no idea what you mean. I'm a little chatty. Yeah.
A little.
Just a bit.
But I do have 3 segments I need to get through. These are our standard segments on the Trumpet Gurus Hang. And the first segment is called Sound Off. And this is sponsored by my good friend Michael Barkley of Barkley Microphones. And it's about your approach to sound. And I guess the way I'd like to address this is, we talk about the natural sound, your natural sound in the trumpet, having a good trumpet sound. But because you are playing in these different venues, there are some nuances to the sound. So what are some of the ways that you could suggest for people to approach developing the versatility in their sound without sacrificing the core nature of a solid trumpet sound?
It's really important. First, I want to quantify as best we can. So there are 2 words I use all of the time, and they are full and clear. You got to make sure that your sound is full and resonant, and that it's clear and there's nothing in it, right? So, and that's primary no matter what you're doing. Because if your sound is full and clear, now you have something to work with. Then there is nothing more important than listening to think, what do I want to sound like? Right. And that's what's going to lead you to the right thing. So if you first job first, your sound is full and clear, then you're on the right path. Then you think, all right, if I want to play in an orchestra, you should be listening to those orchestral trumpet players and listening for, I want to sound like that. And put headphones on, get in a practice room and play along. And you want to be matching exactly. Same thing if you want to be a jazz player. Who's your favorite jazz player? Play along with those recordings. But first and foremost, get the technical part down. And then second part, play along. This is the great part. I'm an old man. When I was in college, we had cassette players. And if you wanted to play through something, we'd play and sound was okay. And then you hit rewind and it wouldn't be in the same place. But the idea of you can walk in with your phone and a really good pair of headphones and be playing along with the best players in the world. Oh, why aren't we doing this all the time? I do it in my office all the time. So put the big speakers on and play. And you're going to find that's going to lead you to, you're going to play. And if you're already fundamentally sound when you're playing along with those people, that's going to lead you into their sounds. And you're going to find that. Your ears are going to lead you to the right place.
All right. Very solid advice. Next segment is called Geared Up. It's brought to us by Venture Mouthpieces. Venture, where technology, design, and craftsmanship intersect. Use the code TrumpetGurus21 to get 10% off your order. Geared Up is about gear, something that I know you hate talking about, like every trumpet player. Well, and again, let's staying on this versatility tip. You have to sometimes do 7 trumpets in 60 minutes. And gear can be when you're switching between gear, there's obviously going to be a little bit of a change. But what are some of the things that you do to ensure that you have a level of consistency with your gear, and maybe some basic concepts of approaches of for a student who's looking to maybe up their gear game a little bit? What are some of the things that you suggest looking at and looking for in the equipment that you choose?
Yeah, this I could talk about for the next hour and a half, so I'll do my best. This is why I practice the way I practice. I get here in the morning and I play through all the horns and all different mouthpieces that I'm expected to use, right? So before 9 a.m., I've played 9 trumpets and probably 9 trumpets and 10 mouthpieces by 9 a.m. So that whatever comes up during the day, and especially as a teacher, if a student's coming in, they're working on piccolo, I've already played piccolo. If they're coming in and working on a cornet solo, I've got my cornet, B flat, C, excerpts, whatever. So that all of them feel like home base. But then put yourself in that situation. So here's an example. A lot of students, when they come to college, they're just learning how to play C trumpet. So get out in the back of the Arbenz book and find those 150 classic and popular melodies. And you're going to play them, play number 1 on B flat trumpet as written, and then read it up a step on C. And then pick up your C trumpet, go right to it, and play it as written. They should sound really, really similar and really, really good. And then you're just going back and forth. And then go, okay, on C, I'll read it down a step, and then go to B flat. It should be the same. So that you're basically making those horns interchangeable. So it's not, well, how do I have to play it, but what could I do, right? And this goes for the commercial players out there. You have flugelhorns. You should be practicing your flugelhorn every day. So when you pick it up on a bandstand, it doesn't feel like, oh, right, it's flugel. It's right, I'm going to play some flugel. It's actually a double, not something you just play when, it's in the charts. Find stuff to do on these horns every day, technically and musically, so that when you're out and performing, that's all, whatever I'm picking up is going to be just fine. One of the things I did on my 7 horns in 60 minutes is I left all the horns on stage. I'd already practiced, and I went up on there. The first thing I started was with piccolo, and I put that down, and I chatted for a little bit, and I just picked up the next horns as I went through, and I never played a note in between. Now, I wasn't doing that to be show-offy. That's just how I didn't really conceive of it until a couple of people afterwards came up and said, so you didn't check, you didn't test, you didn't play any notes? I'm like, no. So how did you practice them all the day? I'm at home with each. You want to build each one of them into a home base. And this goes especially to aspiring young lead players that have a lead mouthpiece. And the only time they play that lead mouthpiece is when they're in jazz band and it's time to play lead. And then it's never quite, it's always a little weird getting going. It takes a while to dial in. You should be practicing on that mouthpiece as well, so that when you put that in, that's home base. You got it. So you want to build that home base into all of your equipment.
Well, that's a lot of work.
It is. It's true. It's a lot of work, but I'm going to tell you, it's totally worth it.
Yeah. Well, so when you talk about playing multiple mouthpieces, obviously, if you're playing B flat and E flat and cornet and flugelhorn, you're not going to use the same mouthpiece for all of them. Or if you're playing, principal, you may not want to use the same mouthpiece if you're playing lead in the big band. You can, but you may not want.
Yeah, for most people, that doesn't work well.
Yeah,
and me included. Yeah.
So, if you're going to have to, for you, let's speak specifically to you. How have you approached your mouthpiece selection? What aspects do you try to keep consistent through the mouthpieces, and what adjustments do you feel are necessary for the individual instruments?
I haven't worried so much about consistency. I know some people like having the same rims or all that kind of stuff. I don't really care much about that. I also play bass trumpet every day, and that's a trombone mouthpiece. So I'm not worried about the different sizes of it. I'm always looking for, am I getting the right sound of that instrument? So when I pick up a cornet, there are people who just use essentially cut down trumpet mouthpieces on cornet, and it's easier, but it doesn't really sound like a cornet. Same thing on flugel. You want to make sure you're using a mouthpiece that really makes that sound like a flugel, really makes that sound like a cornet. You're getting the appropriate sound for B-flat trumpet in a concert band or orchestra, or B-flat trumpet in a jazz band. So I'm looking for that, the right sound coming out the bell.
Yeah. So you're not the let's keep the rims consistent or the diameters consistent, or
No, not. And I know friends of mine that that's important and it works for them. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying I don't do it.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, that was a question about you personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah. My mouthpiece sizes are all over the place. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, certainly if you're playing bass trumpet too, I mean, you can't play that with the same diameters.
Right. And I just played, Bill Stoneman wrote me a piece for my recital last week, and it's an unaccompanied piece. The first movement's on B flat trumpet. And at the end of the piece, you turn, you play a note, and you put down the B flat, pick up the flugel, play the same note. And then you play the second movement all on flugelhorn. And at the end of that movement, you turn and play a note, last note, pick up the bass trumpet, play the same note on that, and then play the third movement. So I want those those are very different rim cup all the way through, and you're literally no stop all three movements. It's a very cool piece. I hope to make like a little stage recording of it this summer, like a live on stage recording, so you can see and hear it. It's very cool.
Yeah. I think it should be a fourth movement where you go to pick.
I'll get him on that.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Well, I mean, how do you feel doing, I mean, I could see going from B flat to flugel to bass, but how about if that went the other direction?
I think it'd be fine. I mean, the Tromba Mundi group, I'm the one that said, wouldn't it be cool to have a bottom octave? And I've been practicing the bass trumpet, so I do the bass trumpet. And I've gone back and forth to the bass and from the bass kind of to everything, including piccolo. So I think it'd be okay. So.
Well, we'll get Bill on that.
We'll get Bill on it. Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Bill, you have your marching orders.
All right, get to work.
All right. Final segment. Final segment is brought to us by Robinson's Remedies, rapid relief for your sore and tired chops. This is the Robinson's Remedies rapid fire round. It's hard to say. And this is a series of questions that bounce all over the place. And we're going to see how quickly Mr. Tartell can answer this series of bizarre questions. So, Joey, are you ready?
Excited. I'm very excited.
All right. I need to get like a buzzer.
Exactly. Start the clock.
Yeah, start the clock. All right, here you go. First question. Who's the biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player?
Wow. Oh my gosh, you just froze me up with the first one. Probably my high school band director. He was really amazing. His name was William Giles Brady.
All right. What is your favorite book?
Ooh, that's way too hard. Fiction, nonfiction, I have qualifications all the way through. In the last 10 years, Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell.
Very good book. What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
Oh, worst movie. I was just talking about it. It's really bad. It's the Time Bandits. I was trying to remember it.
Okay.
Horrible. I stood up in the end with one of my friends, went, we need our 335 back. It's really bad. You should watch it.
I have.
Yeah.
If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
I think if I weren't a trumpet player, I'd be a high school math teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I found that to be a good skill.
Okay. What's your favorite drink?
Oh, I have a huge Diet Coke problem. There's usually one in my hand.
Okay. You're going to have a dinner party, and at this dinner party, you can invite any 3 living people, excluding friends or family. They're already counted in. But any 3 living people, who would you want to have?
They don't have to be trumpet players?
No, any 3 people in the world.
Any 3 people in the world. Okay. I want to hang out with Barack Obama because I think we could play basketball and we'd be friends. And he seems cool. I want to talk to Wynton. I've met him, but I don't know him, and I find him to be a fascinating person. I get one more. Oh gosh, Kevin Durant. I want to talk Kevin Durant because he's kind of quiet. He doesn't do a lot of the interviews. But I'm a big fan.
Okay. All right. You have 3 additional chairs at your table, and you can invite any 3 people from history.
Oh, from history. Oh my gosh. Holy crap. Bach. I want to hear now. I'm assuming we're going to have a translator there. The amount of music that guy put out, I need to know about that. Any from history. Benjamin Franklin seems like a crazy person that I need to talk to. Who else from all of history? I wasn't prepared for this question. So I got Bach, I've got Ben Franklin, and I'm probably going to need one more. I need one more. Who would that be? Oh, uh, that'd be the same era. I think George Washington, because I think he's a little smarter than people give him credit for. He's a general. They made president, said, "You want to be king?" And he said, "No, I need to talk to that guy."
Yeah.
That's a smart guy.
That's a smart dude.
Yeah.
All right. Lacquer, plated, or raw?
Oh, I'm not that picky, but I like lacquer.
Okay. What is your favorite quote?
I don't know that I have a favorite quote. I'll get back to you on that. I have to pass. It'll come to me at the end. Favorite quote.
You can call in the landline.
Okay. I have to phone a friend.
You phone a friend. All right. What is your greatest fear?
Oh, wow. That's good. They're silly ones. Like I don't like spiders. I don't think those are my greatest fears. I think sudden loss, like not of me, but of other people. I worry about. I have friends friends and family that the idea of it being gone. I watch it happen around me, and I do worry about that.
Okay. You could be granted one superpower. What would it be?
I think flight. I'd like to be able to just put a backpack on and go.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
What aspect of trumpet playing do you find to be the most overrated?
Overrated. I think high notes. I think people don't think they can get them, and they can, and so they get fascinated by high notes. Where I think anybody could do it.
All right. What aspect do you think is the most underrated?
A clear and pure sound. I think people get good sounds. When I hear a great sound, there's nothing like it.
All right. You can go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
One piece of advice. I just thought of three. I would say this. That's not right. One piece of advice. It would have to be believe you can do it.
Okay. And while you're back there, you're going to give your younger self one piece of advice about life.
One piece of advice about life. Enjoy it. I think we worry too much.
All right. And a final question for you, Mr. Joey Tartell. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh my gosh. I've never considered that. My legacy to be great trumpet teacher, great trumpet player. That's if people really believe both of those things, I'll be happy.
All right. And a man with immaculate style and taste.
Excellent.
Fashion sense par excellence. Well, Joey, thanks, man, for taking time to talk with me today. This has been great. You're definitely one of my favorite hangs. I always would look forward to catching up with you at the events. Maybe next time I can actually make one of them. So.
I hope so. I had to miss one this year. I'm hoping as they come back and are back in person, we all are back out.
Yeah, absolutely. But I wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors, and certainly will be on the lookout for all that new stuff that you have going on. And I hope to hear that piece that Bill wrote for you. So
absolutely,
I'd love to catch that one.
It's cool.
So, thank you for joining us for this episode, and make sure you like and subscribe and share this with friends. And while you're liking and subscribing this podcast, make sure you do the same thing for Joey's podcast, which is titled The
Open Bell,
which you can find all the places that you listen to your podcasts, just like us. So thanks again for joining us, and peace and slide grease. We out. Thanks for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating deeper connections through our mutual love of music and the trumpet life. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast, and also like and share this episode with a friend. We want to see the hang grow for show. Please support our sponsors, and consider becoming a personal supporter of this podcast as well. Remember, for less than the price of a bottle of valve oil a month, you can keep this podcast moving smoothly. The Trumpet Gurus Hang is recorded at the Candy Factory, a co-working space and social club located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jose Johnson is the executive producer. Post-production editing is by Mitch Bowers. Our opening theme song was composed and performed by Lexi Signor, and our closing theme music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. Incidental music is by Ethan Swayze and Jose Johnson. Graphic design by Ann Kirby of the Sweet Corps. The Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast is produced in collaboration with the So Good Lancaster Media Group.